So we were reading the second canto, chapter 4, text number 20 onwards. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sugati Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So we are continuing with 20th sloka. Hare Krishna Saraswati Mataji, you can continue.
Hare Krishna. Text 20, translation. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andhaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices, and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. Purport: since Sukadeva Goswami is one of the prominent Gatavyalikas who are freed from all misconceptions, he therefore expresses his own realized perception of Lord Sri Krishna as being the sum total of all perfection, the personality of Godhead. Everyone is seeking the favor of the goddess of fortune, but people do not know that Lord Sri Krishna is the beloved husband of all goddesses of fortune. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord, in his transcendental abode Goloka Vrindavan, is accustomed to herding the Surabhi cows and is served there by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. All these goddesses of fortune are manifestations of his transcendental pleasure potency, Hladini Shakti, in his internal energy. And when the Lord manifested himself on this earth, he partially displayed the activities of his pleasure potency in his Rasa Leela, just to attract the conditioned souls who are all after the phantasmagoria pleasure potency in degraded sex enjoyment. The pure devotees of the Lord like Shukadeva Goswami, who was completely detached from the abominable sex life of the material world, discussed this act of the Lord's pleasure potency, certainly not in relation to sex, but to relish a transcendental taste of inconceivable to the mundaners who are after sex life. Sex life in the mundane world is the root cause of being conditioned by the shackles of illusion, and certainly Sukadeva Goswami was never interested in the sex life of the mundane world, nor does the manifestation of the Lord's pleasure potency have any connection with such degraded things. Lord Chaitanya was a strict sannyasi, so much so that he did not allow any woman to come near him, not even to bow down and offer respects. He never even heard the prayers of the Devadasis offered in the temple of Jagannatha, because the sannyasi is forbidden to hear songs sung by the fair sex. Yet even in the rigid position of a sannyasi, he recommended the mode of worship preferred by the gopis of Vrindavan as the topmost loving service possible to be rendered to the Lord. And Srimati Radharani is the principal head of all such goddesses of fortune, and therefore she is the pleasure counterpart of the Lord and is non-different from Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, yes, second paragraph.
In the Vedic rituals, there are recommendations for performing different types of sacrifice in order to achieve the greatest benefit in life. Such benedictions as a result of performing great sacrifices are, after all, favors given by the goddess of fortune, and the Lord, being the husband or lover of the goddess of fortune, is factually the Lord of all sacrifices also. He is the final enjoyer of all kinds of yajna. Therefore, Yagnapati is another name of Lord Vishnu. It is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita that everything be done for the Yagnapati. Yagnartat karmanaha. For otherwise, one's acts will be the cause of conditioning by the law of material nature. Those who are not freed from all misconceptions, Vyalikam, perform sacrifices to please the minor demigods, but the devotees of the Lord know very well that the Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all performances of sacrifice. Therefore, they perform the Sankirtana Yajna, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, which is especially recommended in this age of Kali. In the Kali Yuga, performance of other types of sacrifice is not feasible due to insufficient arrangements and inexpert priesthood.
Hare Krishna Sagar Prabhu, you can use the third paragraph.
Hare Krishna. We have information from Bhagavad Gita 3.10.11 that Lord Brahma, after giving birth to the conditioned souls within the universe, instructed them to perform sacrifices and lead a prosperous life. With such sacrificial performances, the conditioned soul will never be in difficulty in keeping body and soul together. Ultimately, they can purify their existence. They will find natural promotion into the super spiritual existence, the real identity of the living being. A conditioned soul should never give up the practice of sacrifice, charity, and austerity in any circumstances. The aim of all sacrifices is to please the Yajnapati, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord is also Prajapati. According to the Katha Upanishad, the one Lord is the leader of the innumerable living entities. The living entities are maintained by the Lord. Eko Bahanam Yo Vidhanti Kamanam. The Lord is therefore called the Supreme Bhuta Prata, or maintainer of all living beings. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Living beings are proportionately endowed with the intelligence in terms of their previous activities. All living beings are not equally endowed with the same quality of intelligence, because behind such a development of intelligence is the control of the Lord, as declared in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15. As Paramatma, Super Soul, the Lord is living in everyone's heart, and from him only does one's power of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness follow. Mataha smritir jnanam apohanam cha. One person can sharply remember past activities by the grace of the Lord, while others cannot. One is highly intelligent by grace of the Lord, and one is fooled by the same control. Therefore, the Lord is Dhyam Pati, or the Lord of intelligence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Swapna Madan. Hare Krishna Swapna Madan. Hare Krishna Anita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The conditioned souls strive to become lords of the material world. Everyone is trying to lord it over the material nature by applying his highest degree of intelligence. This misuse of intelligence by the conditioned soul is called madness. One's full intelligence should be applied to get free from the material clutches. But the conditioned soul, due to madness only, engages his full energy and intelligence in sense gratification. And to achieve this end of life, he willfully commits all sorts of misdeeds. The result is that instead of attaining an unconditional life of full freedom, the mad conditioned soul is entangled again and again in different types of bondage in material bodies. Everything we see in the material manifestation is but the creation of the Lord. Therefore, he is the real proprietor of everything in the universes. The conditioned soul can enjoy a fragment of this material creation under the control of the Lord, but not self-sufficiently. That is the instruction in the Ishopanishad. One should be satisfied with things awarded by the Lord of the universe. It is out of madness only that one tries to encroach upon another's share of material possessions. The Lord of the universe, out of his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls, descends by his own energy, Atma Maya, to re-establish the eternal relation of the conditioned
Hare Krishna Mother, you are on mute.
all to surrender unto him instead of falsely claiming to be enjoyed for a certain limit under his control. When he so descends, he proves how much greater is his ability to enjoy. And he exhibits his power of enjoyment by, for instance, marrying 16,000 wives at once. The conditioned soul is very proud of becoming the husband of even one wife, but the Lord laughs at this. The intelligent man can know who is the real husband. Factually, the Lord is the husband of all the women in his creation. But a conditioned soul under the control of the Lord feels proud to be the husband of one or two wives. All these qualifications are the different types of pati mentioned in this verse are meant for Lord Sri Krishna, and Sukadeva Goswami has therefore especially mentioned the pati and gati of the Yadu dynasty. The members of the Yadu dynasty know that Lord Sri Krishna is everything, and all of them intended to return to Lord Krishna after he had finished his transcendental pastimes on the earth. The Yadu dynasty was annihilated by the will of the Lord because its members had to return home with the Lord. The annihilation of the Yadu dynasty was a material show created by the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, the Lord and the members of the Yadu dynasty are all eternal associates. The Lord is therefore the guide of all devotees, and as such, Sukadeva Goswami offered him due respects with love-laden feelings. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Jagannath Prabhu, text 21.
Hare Krishna. Translation. It is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who gives liberation. By thinking of his lotus feet at every second following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotees in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think him according to their whims. May the Lord pleased with me. Purport. The mystic yogis, after strenuous efforts to control the senses, may be situated in the place of yoga just to have a vision of super soul within everyone. But the pure devotee simply remembering the Lord's lotus feet at every second at one becomes established in real trance, because by such realization his mind and intelligence are completely cleared of the diseases of material enjoyment. The pure devotee thinks himself fallen into the ocean of birth and death, and increasingly prays to the Lord to lift him up. He only aspires to become a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. The pure devotee, by the grace of Lord, absolutely loses all attraction for material enjoyment, and to keep free from contamination, he always thinks of the lotus feet of Lord. King Kulasekara is a great devotee of the Lord. Prayed.
Krishna Tvadiya Pada Pankaja Pancharantam Adhaiva Ye Vikvishato Manasa Raja Hamsa Prana Prayana Samaye Kapavata Pitha Antavaroda Vidho Samaranam
My Lord Krishna, I pray that the span of my mind may immediately sink down to them to the stem of the lotus feet of your lordship and be looked into their network. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is taken up with the cough, how will be possible to think of you?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Shall I continue?
Wait, one. Hare Krishna, Swapna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
There is an
There-
intimate link.
Yeah. There is an intimate relationship between the swan and the lotus stem. So the comparison is very appropriate. Without becoming a swan or Paramahamsa, one cannot enter into the network of the lotus feet of the Lord. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, the mental speculators, even by dint of learned scholarship, cannot even dream of the absolute truth by speculating over it for eternity. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to such mental speculators, and because they cannot enter into the network stem of the lotus feet of the Lord, all mental speculators differ in conclusions, and at the end they make a useless compromise by saying as many conclusions as many ways, according to one's own inclination, yata rukam. But the Lord is not like the shopkeeper, trying to please all sorts of customers in the mental speculator exchange. The Lord is what he is, the absolute personality of Godhead, and he demands absolute surrender unto him only. The pure devotee, however, by following the ways of the previous acharyas or authorities, can see the Supreme Lord through the transparent medium of a bona fide spiritual master. Anupasyanti. The pure devotee never tries to see the Lord by mental speculation, but by following in the footsteps of the acharyas. Mahajano yena gata sa pantaha. Therefore, there is no difference of conclusions amongst the Vaishnava acharyas regarding the Lord and the devotees. Lord Chaitanya asserts that the living entity Jiva is eternally the servitor of the Lord and that he is simultaneously one with the different from the Lord. This tattva of Lord Chaitanya's is shared by all four sampradayas of the Vaishnava school, all accepting.
Hare Krishna, you are in mute, Mataji. All accessing eternal servitude to the Lord, even after salvation. And there is no authorized Vaishnava Acharya who may think of the Lord himself. Hare Krishna, Sarasya Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I should continue from this humbleness.
Yes, this one.
This humbleness of the pure devotee who is 100% engaged in his service puts the devotee of the Lord in a trance by which to realize everything. Because to the sincere devotee of the Lord reveals himself as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.10. The Lord, being the Lord of intelligence in everyone, even in the non-devotee, favors his devotee with proper intelligence so that automatically the pure devotee is enlightened with the factual truth about the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is revealed not by one's speculative power or by one's verbal jugglery over the absolute truth. Rather, he reveals himself to a devotee when he is fully satisfied by the devotee's service attitude. Sukadeva Goswami is not a mental speculator or compromiser of the theory of as many ways as many conclusions. Rather, he prays to the Lord only invoking his transcendental pleasure. That is the way of knowing the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Abhishek Prabhu, text 22. Please read the highlighted.
Text 22. Translation. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Purport. As we have already discussed here in Before, the Lord, as the supreme soul of all living beings, from Brahman to the insignificant ant, endows all with the required knowledge potent in every living being. A living being is sufficiently potent to possess knowledge from the Lord in the proportion of 50/64 or 78% of the full knowledge acquirable. Since the living being is constitutionally part and parcel of the Lord, he is unable to assimilate all the knowledge that the Lord possesses himself. In the conditioned state, the living being is subject to forgetting everything after a change of body known as death. This potent knowledge is again inspired by the Lord from within the heart of every living being, and it is known as the awakening of knowledge, for it is comparable to awakening from sleep or unconsciousness. This awakening of knowledge is under the full control of the Lord, and therefore we find in the practical world different grades of knowledge in different persons. This awakening of knowledge is neither an automatic nor a material interaction. The supply source is the Lord himself, Dhyam Patihi. For even Brahma is also subject to this regulation of the Supreme Creator. In the beginning of creation, Brahma is born first without any father and mother, because before Brahma there were no other living beings. Brahma is born from the lotus which grows from the abdomen of the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and therefore he is known as Aja. This Brahma or Aja is also a living being, part and parcel of the Lord, but being the most pious devotee of the Lord, Brahma is inspired by the Lord to create subsequent to the main creation by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Therefore, neither the material nature nor Brahma is independent of the Lord. The material scientist can merely observe the reactions of the material nature without understanding the direction behind such activities. As a child can see the action of electricity without any knowledge of the powerhouse engineer. This imperfect knowledge of the material scientist is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The Vedic knowledge was therefore first impregnated within Brahma, and it appears that Brahma distributed the Vedic knowledge.
Hare Krishna Praveen Guru can continue from Brahma.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of the Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to reach such transcendental knowledge, as it directly descends from the Lord. The Vedas are therefore called Apurusha, or not imparted by any created being. Before the creation, the Lord was there, Narayana Paro Vyaktat. And therefore, the words spoken by the Lord are vibration of transcendental sounds. There is a gulf of difference between the two qualities of sounds, namely Prakrita and Aprakrita. And the psychist can deal only with the Prakrita sound or sound vibrated in the material sky, and therefore we must know that the Vedic sounds recorded in symbolic expressions cannot be understood by anyone within the universe unless and until one is inspired by the vibration of supernatural Aprakrita sound, which descends in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and so on. No mundane scholars can translate or reveal the true import of the Vedic mantras, hymns. They cannot be understood unless one is inspired or initiated by the authorized spiritual master. The original spiritual master is the Lord himself, and the succession comes down through the source of parampara, as clearly stated in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So unless one receives the transcendental knowledge from the authorized parampara, one should not be considered useless, nishpaha mataha, even though one may be greatly qualified in the mundane advancement of art science. Sukadeva Goswami is praying to the Lord by dint of being inspired from within by the Lord, so that he could rightly explain the facts and figures of creations as inquired by Maharaja Parikshit. A spiritual master is not a theoretical speculator like the mundane scholar, but is Srotam Brahma Nishtam. Hare Krishna. Guruji.
Hare Krishna, Anita Maji. Paragraph.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his pursuer incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Purport. As a fully dependent devotee, Sukadev Goswami, unlike a mundane man who is proud of his own capability, invokes the pleasure of the personality of Godhead so that his statements may be successful and be appreciated by the hearers. The devotee always thinks of himself as instrumental for anything successfully carried out, and he declines to take credit for anything done by himself. The godless atheist wants to take all credit for activities, not knowing that even a blade of grass cannot move without the sanction of the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead. Sukadev Goswami therefore wants to move by the direction of the Supreme Lord, who inspired Brahma to speak the Vedic wisdom. The truths described in the Vedic literatures are not theories of mundane imagination, nor are they fictitious, as the less intelligent class of men sometimes think. The Vedic truths are all perfect descriptions of the factual truth without any mistake or illusion. And Sukadev Goswami wants to present the truths of creation not as a metaphysical theory of philosophical speculation, but as the actual facts and figures of the subject. Since he would be dictated to by the Lord exactly in the same manner as Brahmaji was inspired. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, the Lord is himself the father of the Vedanta knowledge, and he is only who knows the factual purport of the Vedanta philosophy. So there is no greater truth than the principles of religion mentioned in the Vedas. Such Vedic knowledge or religion is disseminated by authorities like Sukadev Goswami, because he is humble devotional servitor of the Lord, who has no desire to become a self-appointed interpreter without authority. That is the way of explaining the Vedic knowledge, technically known as the Parampara system or descending process.
Hare Krishna, Sagar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. The intelligent man can see without mistake that any material creation, whether one's own body or a fruit or flower, cannot beautifully grow up without the spiritual touch. The greatest intelligent man of the world or the greatest man of this science can present everything very beautifully only insofar as the spirit of life is there, or in so much as the spiritual touch is there. Therefore, the source of all truth is the supreme spirit and not gross matter, as wrongly conceived by the gross materialist. We get information from the Vedic literature that the Lord himself first entered the vacuum of the material universe, and thus all things gradually developed one after another. Similarly, the Lord is situated as localized Paramatma in every individual being. Hence, everything is done by him very beautifully. The 16 principal creative elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, and the 11 sense organs, first developed from the Lord himself and were thereby shared by the living entities. Thus, the material elements were created for the enjoyment of the living entities. The beautiful element behind the material manifestation is therefore made possible by the energy of the Lord, and the individual living entity can only pray to the Lord to understand it properly. Since the Lord is the supreme entity, different from Sukadeva Goswami, the prayer can be offered to him. The Lord helps the living entity to enjoy material creation, but he is aloof from such false enjoyment. Sukadeva prays for the mercy of the Lord, not only for being helped personally in presenting the truth, but also for helping others to whom he would like to speak. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Jagannath, 24th.
Hare Krishna. I offer translation. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva, who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotee drinks up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. Purport. In the pursuance of the specific utterance Vedas say, or the compiler of the system of transcendental knowledge, Srila Sridhara Swami has commented that the respectable obeisances are offered to Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Vasudeva. Srila Jiva Goswami has agreed to this, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura has made a further advance, namely that the nectar from the mouth of the Lord Krishna is transcendental to his different consorts, and thus they learn the finer arts of music, dance, dressing, decorations, and all such things which are relished by the Lord. Such music, dance, and decorations enjoyed by the Lord are certainly not anything mundane, because the Lord addressed in the every beginning as para or transcendental. This transcendental knowledge is unknown to the forgotten conditioned souls. Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of the Lord, thus compiled Vedic literatures to revive the lost memory of the conditioned souls about their eternal relations with the Lord. One should therefore try to understand the Vedic scriptures or their nectar transferred by the Lord to his consorts in the conjugal humor from the lotus-like mouth of Vyasadeva or Sukadeva. By gradual development of transcendental knowledge, one can rise to the stage of the transcendental arts of music and dance displayed by the Lord in his Raslila. But without having the Vedic knowledge, one can hardly understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's Rasa dance and music. The pure devotees of the Lord, however, can equally relish the nectar in the form of the profound philosophical discourses and in the form of kissing by the Lord in the rasa dance, as there is no mundane distinction between the two. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Sarasya Madhavan, first paragraph.
Hare Krishna, text 25. Translation. My dear King Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. Purport. As soon as Brahma was born of the abdominal lotus petals of Vishnu, he was impregnated with Vedic knowledge, and therefore he is known as Veda Garbha, or a Vedantist from the embryo. Without Vedic knowledge or perfect infallible knowledge, no one can create anything. All scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. One can get all types of information from the Vedas, and as such, Brahma was impregnated with all perfect knowledge so that it was possible for him to create. Thus, Brahma knew the perfect description of creation as it was exactly apprised to him by the Supreme Lord Hari. Brahma, on being questioned by Narada, told Narada exactly what he had heard directly from the Lord. Narada again told exactly the same thing to Vyasa. And Vyasa also told Sukadeva exactly what he heard from Narada. And Sukadeva was going to repeat the same statements as he had heard from Vyasa. That is the way of Vedic understanding. The language of Vedas can be revealed only by the above mentioned disciplic succession and not otherwise. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Abhishek.
There is no use.
There is no use in theories. Knowledge must be factual. There are many things that are complicated and one cannot understand them unless they are explained by one who knows. The Vedic knowledge is also very difficult to know and must be learned by the above mentioned system. Otherwise, it is not at all understood. Sukadeva Goswami therefore prayed for the mercy of the Lord so that he might be able to repeat the very same message that was spoken directly by the Lord to Brahma, or what was directly spoken by Brahma to Narada. Therefore, the statements of creation explained by Sukadeva Goswami are not at all, as the mundanist suggests, theoretical, but are practically perfectly correct. One who hears these messages and tries to assimilate them gets perfect information of the material creation. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Process of Creation. Hare Krishna.
Fifth chapter is the causes of all causes. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, text number 1.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Translation. Sri Narada Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief among us the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. But the perfection of the parampara system or the path of disciplic succession is further confirmed. In the previous chapter, it has been established that Brahmaji, the firstborn living entity, received knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord, and the same knowledge was imparted to Narada, the next disciple. Narada asked to receive the knowledge, and Brahmaji imparted it upon being asked. Therefore, asking for transcendental knowledge from the right person and receiving it properly is the regulation of the disciplic succession. The process is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual master to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries, and service. Knowledge received by submissive inquiries and service is more effective than knowledge received in exchange for money. A spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from Brahma and Narada has no demand for dollars and cents. A bona fide student has to satisfy him by sincere service to obtain knowledge of the relation and nature of the individual soul and the super soul. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Perfect. The inquiries by Narada Muni on the basis of the factual cause and effect appear very reasonable. The atheist, however, put forward many self-made theories without any touch of cause and effect. The manifested world as well as the spirit soul still unexplained by the godless atheists through the medium of experimental knowledge. Although they have put forward many theories manufactured by the fertile brains. Contrary to such mental and speculative theories of creation, however, Narada Muni wanted to know all the facts of creation in truth and not by theories. Transcendental knowledge regarding the soul and the super soul includes knowledge of the phenomenal world and the basis of its creation. The phenomenal world, three things are factually observed by an intelligent man. The living beings, the manifest world, the ultimate control over them. The intelligent man can see that neither the living entity nor the phenomenal world are creations of chance. The symmetry of creation and its regulative actions and reactions suggests the plan of an intelligent brain behind them. And by genuine inquiry, one may find out the ultimate cause with the help of one who knows them actually. Hare Krishna. So we'll continue with the third text in the next coming Tuesday, the same time 7:30. Thank you so much for giving me your association. Thank you, Praveen Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam, Sagar Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam, Tarsida Masi, Abhishek Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam, Jagannath Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam, Anita Masi, Dhanavad Pranam, Swapna Masi, Dhanavad Pranam. वाचा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
धन्यवाद।